crash course. It's one of those things where, you know, we debated making the workshops longer, but at the end of the day, we wanted to see, can we give people tangible, actionable information in the course of 2 hours and clear up, okay, I have this problem, now I kind of know the easy stuff to work on. Protect, correct, develop. This mobilization stuff was the correct part. But if you modify your sitting, if you do 1 less hour of sitting and in a chair and 20 minutes of hip mobility work every day, you will change big time if it's done consistently, right? Protect first. Wear good shoes. You don't have to mobilize your feet as much, because wearing shoes that let your foot function like they're barefoot is a foot mobilization and a foot strengthening exercise just by being on your feet. Okay, and for a lot of people, you know, feet get weak very easily because most people wear shoes that either support their arch or they're sitting and not fighting gravity. So none of that time are you loading the arch of your foot. So how would it be strong or able to support itself, right? So when you're first starting to go barefoot or wearing shoes without support and without cushioning, it takes time to condition your feet and get them working like they're supposed to again. So just be patient, right? Patience is the one element that few people have, and you know, they want to offset 20 years or 2-3 decades worth of hip stiffness in 2 weeks, and if it's not gone in 2 weeks, they're pissed. It's like, well, it doesn't happen that way. But you will progress on a very predictable schedule if you're being consistent with the stuff. So the last 2 things that we want to touch on at the end here is footwear and orthotics. So, you know, we often get people asking us, well, what shoe should I buy? What's the best shoe? It's like, well, that's the wrong question to be asking. What you should be asking is, what should I look for in shoes, so that you can make your own independent evaluation of every shoe that you go and buy. And if your only mission is every time I buy a pair of shoes, I buy a more functional shoe, not the perfect shoe, but like if this one is more functional than the last one I bought, then you're going in the right direction. You don't have to throw out all your shoes and get all brand new shoe wardrobe. Now, what to look for in footwear. The 2 non-negotiable ones that you always want to have are flat. So if you look at a shoe from the side, the heel should not be higher than the forefoot. So get flat shoes and get footwear that has a wide forefoot. How wide do you need? Well, if you go barefoot beside the shoe and the shoe is a lot narrower than your foot, that shoe is too narrow. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to find footwear like that, right? That's why the only reason we sell footwear is because people in Canada cannot get that kind of footwear. And so we had to provide it. But you have to do a little bit more searching, but I promise you it's worth it. If your everyday shoe that you wear most frequently is a good shoe for your foot, that will be a very powerful force to mobilize and strengthen your foot. Okay, so flat, wide forefoot, flexible. Okay, so if you take a shoe, mine over there, but if you take a shoe, you should be able to twist it, scrumple it, bend it, all that kind of stuff. That means it's not going to inhibit the motion of those 33 joints in each of your feet. And the last one is thin, so thin sole. The thinner, the better. The thinner the sole is, the more sensory input you're going to get from the ground. The more you're going to feel all these different things like, you know, rocks, curbs, angles, all that kind of stuff. Okay? And if you ditch, you know, we talked about how cushioning is really just a way to deprive the sensory input from your foot. So we don't need cushioning. If you have cushioning in your shoes, it lets you walk very weirdly without realizing it, and especially with running. We won't get into that, but and then arch support. Any support you give your foot externally is support you don't have to get from the muscles of your own foot. So arch support is really just a way to weaken your foot. And the more you wear arch support, the more you have to rely on it because you lose the ability to do it yourself. Okay? So that's footwear. We talk about orthotics. We started the TFC Audio Project podcast because topics like orthotics are very complex, multivariable topics. And to do a post on Instagram and write 5 lines of text, it's obviously going to piss some people off, or it's going to be unclear. So the podcast, we did one on orthotics. So if you want a longer conversation about that, that's probably the best place to get it. But you know, the reason we see orthotics is not a very effective way to treat foot dysfunction is because, number one, foot dysfunction really is an indicator that your hips aren't doing what they're supposed to most of the time, right? So looking at the hips and fixing those issues is a much better long-term solution than just giving your foot artificial support. And really, if you look at why people get plantar fasciitis or foot pain, foot-specific pain, a lot of times it's because their foot is stiff and weak. Okay? If you come see me with a stiff and weak and painful neck, I don't put you in a neck brace for the rest of your life, right? I try and get you to strengthen and mobilize your neck. And you know, a muscle that's weak can be strengthened. A joint that's stiff can be mobilized. And that's what needs to be done to restore function in those areas. And so someone coming to see, you know, if you have a stiff, weak foot and it's painful and you go see someone and they put you in orthotics, it'll probably make your foot feel better temporarily. But it's usually at the expense of making your foot stiffer and weaker. Right?
If you think about it, so a lot of the times the plantar fascia gets overloaded because all the other things that are supposed to support the arch are basically not doing their job. And basically the plantar fascia is taking over the entire arch support role, right? So if you think about what other things that support the arch, all of the lower leg muscles that attach into the foot help support the arch. Your hip's ability to position your arch helps support your arch. All the intrinsic muscles underneath your plantar fascia in your foot, they're also big arch supporters. So if all these other things are not doing their job, it's just kind of an overload issue. Plantar fasciitis is an overload issue on the plantar fascia tissue, right? So we want to look at getting all these helpers into the game and off the bench, basically strengthening them over time so they can offload that plantar fascia so we can get things back on track. And like I say, orthotics does not do that. Orthotics just says, okay, you've overloaded that tissue, let's provide something to offload it even further, right? But then it misses the whole thing of like, why is this happening and what do we need to do to make this more sustainable? So.
Cool. So sometimes we balance beam work, like we always just mention this, because what we found is with the balance beams, it allows us to get people on a challenging surface and see how their hips react. Okay? What balance beam work is neuromuscular problem solving. And I love it in clinic because it makes my job so much easier. I don't have to cue someone. I don't have to tell them to fire this or fire that. I just say, stand on the beam, don't look down, try not to fall off. And the beautiful part is that it doesn't matter how old you are, how strong you are, how flexible you are, you will improve very quickly. Why? Because all you're doing is reinforcing the feedback loop of, when I balance on a beam or balance on one foot, my foot sends a signal to my brain computes that signal, tells my hip what to do to stop me from falling over. That happens many, many times per second. The more efficient that pathway is, the better your balance. The more you practice balance, the more efficient that pathway becomes. Okay, it's neurological, it's brain work. It is not muscle work, and it's why so many people can improve very quickly. And why should you care about improving? Because that's what protects you from getting your knee and your ankle in nasty positions. Really, a beam puts you between an inversion ankle sprain and an ACL tear. It tells you where those two extremes are. It tells you how to avoid those two positions. And it also tells you how to protect yourself if you get close to that position. It tells what muscles to fire, in what way, at what strength to stop you from getting in that position and get back to optimal posture. It's kind of like a postural compass, because if you don't align everything from your foot to your hip to your head together, you're going to be off balance. And what you'll find, I encourage everyone to just stand on it for 60 seconds and see what it feels like, because not only is the rounded tube going to splay your foot and open it up, you have no choice but to use your foot and your hip on there, because if you don't, you fall over. Okay, so most people start with a 2x4, right? 2x4 of lumbar every day. Walk heel to toe without looking down, forward and backwards. You do that for 5 minutes a day, your balance will improve significantly. Okay, and balance is one of those things that people assume the older you get, the worse your balance is, but it's only because you spend less time on your feet or working on things that require balance that your balance degrades. And when a decrease in balance when you're 80 results in a hip fracture, that can be a serious threat to your livelihood. So it's probably in your best interest to train balance a little bit, or at least be mindful of it. Right? What's the value of spending time working on being strong on one leg? Well, walking is a series of phases of standing on one leg. Running is a series of phases standing on one leg. A lot of our life happens on one leg, so just train it to be good at it, and life becomes easy. Right? And it's really from the standpoint of injury prevention and performance, it's about making your body efficient at acknowledging what good posture is and how to basically recruit these little fine-tuning stabilizers at your hip and your foot to do their job so that all the big muscles like your calf and your low back don't have to take on the job of postural stabilizers, because they suck at it long term and they get tight, and then we start to run into problems. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that. It's really, it's always a forever work in progress, right? If I look back at the workshop 1.0 we gave 6 months ago, this is totally different, because as we learn new ways of delivering things, as we get feedback from people, we try and incorporate different things or try and give more in that 2 hours. So we're not going to expand the workshop beyond 2 hours, but we're going to try and pack different things in there and deliver in different ways that resonates more with people. So anyway, thank you.